Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here. First, I just want to make sure that you all can see my screen. Does it have the title page on it?
Yes, it does.
I'm getting yeses, so good.
You're
So
good.
what I would like to talk about today is this idea of heart-mind coherence and the importance of reconnecting intellect and emotion. My name is Carol Milloy. I'm the founder of thrivuary, where I help you be authentically you. So since I'm new to this platform, I would like to introduce myself a little bit and tell you a little bit about me. I like to call myself a holistic emotional wellness coach. I used to use the phrase psycho-spiritual coach, but I thought that the term sounded a little too much like spiritual psycho. So I am an evolutionary astrologer, hence my reason for being here. I'm also a Reiki master. And if you're unfamiliar with that, Reiki is a Japanese healing art that works around the energetic body. I'm also a retired registered nurse. I worked 20 years bedside, and most of that time was spent in the intensive care unit and the recovery room. And I also have to mention something that's near and dear to my heart, which is a local nonprofit here in Phoenix, Arizona, called Village of the Valley, where we support and help women overcome the impacts of abuse. And not only am I a board member, I'm a graduate of the program. So my philosophy as an astrologer is this: you are the driver of your life. Evolutionary astrology is our vehicle, and I am your navigator. You can find me at astrocara.com or at thrivuary on my social media platforms. So I would like to begin with this, and I think that most of us would agree that there is a global mental health crisis currently present, and we have limited resources for dealing with this. I would propose, though, that the underlying issue is a problem of an individual, and that is the heart-mind disconnect. As evolutionary astrologers, we understand the potential healing impact of our work. I know it's made a significant difference in my own life, and it's led me to want to do this professionally. Many astrologers that I've talked with have had a similar experience. And so I invite you to come on a little journey with me, a path that I'm calling a path back to interconnectedness. I like this quote, and I'll read it here. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And I use this a lot as an empowerment quote to help us remember that we are responsible and accountable, and we have the ability to heal ourselves. Of course, sometimes we need outside support. Of course, sometimes we need wisdom and knowledge that others can bring us. But the work needs to be done as us as an individual. So I'd like to begin. I want to talk about the Leo Aquarius axis. And for those of us practitioners of evolutionary astrology, this is going to be a little review. If you're a student of EA, hopefully I can bring you a little something in a different way. Or if you're finding this as a replay and this is new to you, then this is an introduction to how we look at archetypes within this astrological view. So you can think about the Earth on its axis and the North and South Pole. They're always together, but they're opposite. So when I'm looking at any axis within a chart, we're looking at two separate archetypes, understanding that they cannot exist without the other. EA looks at archetypal energies as trinities. What do I mean by that? So when I'm talking about Aquarius, I'm talking about the sign, the planet, and the house. Aquarius specific is Uranus and the 11th house. Leo is correlated to the sun and the 5th house. So I want to do a little review, like I mentioned, and I'm going to start with Aquarius, Uranus, and the 11th house. From here on, I'm actually going to use the term Aquarius, but please know that I'm speaking about all three because they all contain the same archetypal energy. Some keywords associated with Aquarius: fracturing, splitting, and breaking. When we're looking at the natural zodiac, Aquarius precedes Pisces and is preceded by Capricorn and followed by Pisces. So if Capricorn is something that is structured, something that is solidified, crystallized, and Pisces is the ocean of the all that is, it makes sense that we would somehow have to break apart the solidness to then move back into the ocean. Aquarius can also relate to trauma. And I want to be clear on this. It doesn't cause trauma, but it's how it is felt within the human experience that we relate it to this idea. And I'll talk more about that here in a moment. So a couple other keywords that are associated with Aquarius include new ideas, innovation, technology. Have you ever had a light bulb moment? Of course, we all have. It's when we can be doing something completely mundane and all of a sudden something new comes to our awareness. Something that sparks something new. That's Aquarius. How it can relate to trauma in this instance is when those new ideas and changes and new technologies and new innovations happen faster than our human mind can process. Something can become fractured within our mental space. Other keywords associated with Aquarius include the rebel, the revolutionary, unique and different, a trailblazer, someone who stands out. And of course, we need those people. We need those leaders. And I think you probably can remember a time when, whether it be with family, friends, maybe at work, where you needed to voice an opinion that was separate from the group consensus. And maybe you got some feedback that dismissed what you were saying. And maybe you felt a little embarrassed or a little withdrawn, and then maybe even alienated from the group, misunderstood. This is the shadow of this part of the aspect of the archetype. When we look at EA as natural law, I like to look at things that are macro and micro. And I'm bringing this in specifically, which you'll see in a moment. But if we're looking at Aquarius as lightning, as something that is charged, something that is potentially shocking and brings electricity. In the human experience, this picture on the right is actually a picture of a nerve cell within the brain, or several actually. And they work, impulses run on electricity in the brain. They move from cell to cell along these pathways. So Aquarius actually does correlate to brain function in this way. The symbol of Aquarius is actually waves, which I think is pretty cool. And if you've never seen this, an EEG, or is how we measure electrical activity within the brain, and it shows up as a picture of waves. So now I want to talk a little bit about the polarity, which is Leo. The sun provides the earth and all of us with life. So it is our vital life force. It's also our sense of purpose, our inner power and strength, how we need to be validated, recognized, and maybe even a desire for fame. Leo also relates to children, including our own playful, imaginative inner child. It can relate to lighthearted romance and the creation of children. And for the purpose of today, heart-centered emotions. So again, looking at the macro and the micro, this is something that I've always found fascinating, working as a nurse and now working in a more spiritual realm, that the heart generates a significant amount of electromagnetic energy that is measurable up to 22 feet away from your actual person. Just as, okay, so I think we had a little hiccup. I'm going to start back where I was talking about my amazingness that the heart generates one of the largest electromagnetic fields, and it can be measured up to 22 feet away from a human. And then as we saw in the picture of the nerve cells, on the bottom right here is a picture of a heart cell. And within it is an electrical impulse as well. And how that is measured, of course, is by an EKG. You may be more familiar with that than the EEG. And the symbol for Leo is up here at the top, and it's meant to represent a lion's mane, Leo the lion. But what I think is really cool is that if you mirror the symbol and put it together, it actually looks like a heart. So I wanted to pause just a few minutes and see if there were any questions or any comments. And if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat, the Q&A box, and we can look at them. So I touched on a little bit of information about Aquarius, a little bit about Leo. So if I can offer it this way, as Aquarius as the intellect, Leo as the emotions, and the importance of this axis in coming together as heart-mind coherence. When I talk about trauma and how I associate it with Aquarius, again, not because it causes trauma, but because how it's felt within the human experience. I find it such a beautiful thing as an astrologer, an evolutionary astrologer, that the remedy is within the archetype itself, and the remedy exists within the polarity. So this is what I'd like to talk about next. When we talk about the brain cells, again, just a picture of how it moves. It moves, thoughts and sensations move as electrical impulses through the brain along pathways or roads, and they're ultimately all connected to each other. And there's this beautiful thing called neuroplasticity, which simply means that the brain can change, that changes in thinking can create changes in behavior. This is the remedy within the archetype of Aquarius. Have you ever changed your mind about something? Sure, we do it all the time. Have you ever changed a habit? Maybe beginning a new health regimen at the beginning of the year, or say quitting smoking? This is how neuroplasticity works, by rerouting those pathways. Again, as we change our thought patterns, we can change our behaviors. So imagine a field and you begin to walk through it. As you begin to walk through it, the grass wears down. And let's say you decide to walk along that same path every day for a while. Eventually, it gets worn down enough that you notice the path is there. And then maybe we decide to build a sidewalk. And then it gets more traffic. So we decide we need to expand it into a road. And then that road moves to the highway. So now we're driving down this new road on a regular, habitual way. The old road that we used to take becomes overgrown. And eventually we forget that we even went that way. So creating new pathways in the brain by creating these new thought patterns over and over again, we can see that we don't have to go back to the old ways of triggered behavior. This is part of how trauma is healed. And as I talk about the remedy within the polarity itself, Leo being the polarity, there's something within the heart called sensory neurites. And I'm going to show a little clip of a video in a moment that explains it a little bit better than I can. But I want to propose that trauma is stored in the memory of both brains, if you will, the heart and the cranial mind. And we cannot only intellectually heal, we must also heal. So I was looking at a video by Gregg Braden where he talks about these sensory neurites within the heart and how it actually can think independently from the cranial brain. So this is where I find a lot of my work and where I find a passion for my work is I work with people who have been to, say, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is standard talk therapy, and where we're working on it with our mental space and our intellectual space. And also people who have done somatic therapy, which is where we've gotten into the body and we're feeling it. And what I am proposing is that we need to connect them both, that there is a place for each of them, of course. I'm not discouraging either one. I am encouraging them to be connected. One of my favorite lyrics to one of my favorite songs is here: the only way to win is to reconnect. And then, of course, I have these pictures of people holding themselves. And I think self-love and self-care kind of gets a bad rap these days, but there is a significant importance to it. And what self-care is to me may not be what it looks like for you. And that's okay. I think the beautiful thing about EA is that we can get to a point where we can extrapolate from a chart essential needs. where we can help someone understand what it is that their soul is intending and what they need, and then help them to reconnect to those parts of themselves. So when I talk about heart-mind coherence, one of the most simple ways to get there is breath work. And when I first heard the term breath work, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't focus on this. This is just something that yogis do, or people that, focus on this all the time. But it really can be just a very brief experience. So I'd actually like to try that with us now, if you wouldn't mind playing along. It's a practice called square breath. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to breathe in for a count of 4, hold it, breathe out, and hold it, and I'll count for you. Of course, if this is uncomfortable for you, or if you have any breathing issues, do it at your own pace. So let's go. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. It really is that simple. And just that easy exercise can lower cortisol levels for up to 4 hours. So whenever you're stressed, do this as much as you possibly need. I actually find myself doing it quite a bit throughout the day. Another exercise or opportunity that I found to create this heart-mind coherence is to open a space of appreciation and gratitude. Now, there are so many times when we're feeling these uncomfortable emotions, frustration, pain, anger, rejection, isolation, that it might be difficult to tap into a space of gratitude. So the simplest way I have found is to begin by thanking my body. We just did a breathing exercise. So let's thank our lungs for doing the work. Thank our heart for continuing to keep our life flow moving. Thank our brain for allowing us to connect to what I'm saying. Again, the idea here is to connect a cognitive process with something that we're doing within the body. An active mental process with a somatic feeling. That is heart-mind coherence. That is reconnecting intellect and emotion. So I have a few references here that I've used, and if you're interested in looking any of this up, it has a lot of information about heart-mind coherence, the sensory neurites within the heart, and Dr. Gabot Mate and Bessel Kolk are trauma specialists, and Dr. Carolyn Leaf is a specialist in neuroplasticity. I love this quote, and this is one of the things that I use in my own personal philosophy and as I practice with clients. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So I want to pause for a minute. Do we have any questions?
Not so far. I don't see anything in the chat. So if anybody has a question,
Okay.
go ahead and put it in the chat and we will read it to Kara. I think we're good for now.
Perfect. So I did want to, okay, perfect. So I did want to do a little bit of chart work and just show you some of why or how I have brought this about. This is a chart of a client that I've been working with for about a year, and significantly about some of the things that I've actually just talked about. And I chose this chart mainly because of his natal moon. So if you see the natal moon there in Leo in the 11th house, connects to what I was just sharing about the axis. So he has both of those relating to his moon. So when we talk about the moon archetype in EA, we're talking about the Cancer, the sign of Cancer, and also the 4th house. Some of the things that it relates to are the mother or maternal caregiver, family of origin, and upbringing, conditional early childhood conditioning and upbringing. So when we have a natal moon in the 11th house in Leo, this person had a very good relationship with his mother early on. He described it as very playful, very creative. Leo. Unfortunately, he lost his mother to cancer when he was 9. So there was trauma there. And then being raised by a single dad who was unable to process his own grief. John is my client, was not able to then process his own. He began to be restricted in how he expressed himself. You can see that in the Saturn-Venus conjunction. What's significant about this chart, this was actually a transit chart from July of 2022, when the nodes were squaring his moon, and Saturn, currently retrograde in this chart, was opposing it. This is about when real significant deep changes were happening for him. He was facing a lot of his old trauma of abandonment and loss, South Node Scorpio, and looking at how he could develop his own sense of self-worth now in view of his childhood conditioning, North Node Taurus, Saturn in Aquarius. So as he was processing all of this emotional grief and the anger that came with it, we did a lot of work with creating safe space, allowing him to talk about it intellectually, of course. And then we also did a lot of somatic work where we were getting back in touch with the inner child. I'm just going to check my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything. I think significantly now, I didn't pull up a chart of the transits for today, January 2023, but I can tell you that now that the nodes have moved past the point of the exact square and Saturn is now direct, moving away from that opposition, he does feel a significant sense of renewal. And all the work that he has been doing, he is now putting into place this new sense of his self-worth. Uranus and Taurus. Any questions about the chart itself?
We don't have any questions, but there was a comment before that what you had said was awesome. So there's that.
Thank you. But it resonated.
Yes, exactly.
And this is a lot of deep stuff, and it's part of my passion, obviously, because of my own healing journey. And so this is why I want to do what I'm doing. And this is why I bring this to my clients that I work with. And so this is why I bring up this slide then. You are safe here. I think one of the biggest things that we can do as astrologers or as practitioners who are working with people that have trauma, which is essentially everyone, is to provide a safe space for them. And so this is where my heart lies. And I thought that this was going to take me a lot longer, but I just read through my notes so quickly. Do you want to just interact for a little while? I feel like I just breezed through all of that.
Sure, if anybody has any questions, go ahead, and if you want to stop your share, we can just put it on gallery view and see if anybody has any comments or questions. And I will start by saying this was great, very interesting. And we can, if you want to get me those references, I can put them in the description of the video on YouTube.
Perfect. Yep, I can definitely do that. Yeah, gosh, I feel a little odd, but this was my first time, presenting like this. So I'm learning. I appreciate the opportunity.
So there's a couple of comments. One was, it was a very nice presentation and thank you. And then that was from Stephanie. And Lisa says, I feel like balancing this axis is like finding the alchemical union in the chart.
I agree 100%. And it's so interesting to watch play out in a person's life over time, which of course is, how astrology works, is we're looking at cycles and how things affect us over time. And, John is very much, and I didn't mention, but I would put him at late individuated state, moving into spiritualized state. And he's definitely seeking this new path for himself. And when you see those transits, you know that it's a significant time, whether it is something that's conscious and that somebody is actively working on, or if it's something that they're just feeling and they don't know how to handle or process. But we know that it's there. And we know that, somewhere it's showing up in their life. So this was something that he had not been able, like I said, had not been able to grieve his mother's passing. And, he's 50, almost 54. So, he just has come through his Chiron return, which activated a significant amount of that wounding. And then that nodal square to his moon really just activated bringing up the past and needing to confront it. And it's been challenging for him, but he's doing the work. And so it's good to see in real life.
Well, I don't see any other questions or comments, but I'd really like to thank you, Kara. This was wonderful.
Yes, very good presentation for your first time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I want to say happy birthday to Adrienne. I don't think she was going to know that I was going to call her out, but today's her birthday. So happy birthday.
Awesome. And we look forward to the next time.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you having me, and thank you for joining, everyone. We'll see you next time.
And thank you
Okey-doke.
for your fresh perspective.